Hi, have you ever thought in the middle of a busy road that that if cars stop coming on this road and if people stop walking on this road and if there are no pedestrians, no vehicles on this road, what will happen to this road? Well, in probably 20 years of time, there will be small weeds which will come out and plants will form, and probably the street will become sort of a small, bushy sort of a forest ground. In 30 years of time, maybe even small animals will also start inhabiting there, and maybe in another 50 or 60 or 70 years of time, it'll turn into a full blown uh, swamp, forest, whatever you call it, which means that all of these plants and animals and um, minerals and stones will fill up the whole space. It only means that nature by default is abundant in nature. There is always a lot of something somewhere else. For example, that road can turn into an entire forest if there is no human habitation. Have you ever observed a bread that you keep in the kitchen in the summers? There are a lot of moles over it. So, of course, the moles are of no concern to us and it will end up messing up with our digestive tract. So we throw that bread, but we cannot help recognize the fact that the moment you keep the bread in your kitchen, it immediately there is abundance of moles, abundance of fungi there, right? Which means the world and the natural order of the world is abundance. Even a land which is barren in nature, where trees cannot grow, crops cannot grow, no seed can be planted there. If you look below that piece of land, you will find lots of insects and termites and lots of worms there, which means it is abundant in something. So, the natural order and the natural state of this entire universe is a state of abundance. However, just like that car that I mentioned in the last video, that I was not aware of until I decided to buy that car. Just like that baby who was unable to understand if keys, locks, and hooks exist because he had never grown up in a world full of keys, hooks, and locks, we also are unable to look at that abundance. Things that don't work for us, we don't look at it in that angle, in that manner, in that point of view. Instead, what we do is we end up believing in a concept. As I had said in my last video, that first of all, I have to get through this particular percentage and then this college and then this job, only then I will be able to make this amount of money. You know, that first of all, I have to set up the company and then spend 5 years bootstrapping about the company, and only then I can expect for profit to happen, right? So we end up believing in these concepts, and then what we do is also we fulfill these concepts by proving them, and then we tell ourselves only that, see, I was right, and therefore my belief was also right. And I called it the evidentiary contrivances. You contrive a reality, you deliberately create a lie for yourself, and you then end up proving that lie, and you tell yourself that, okay, this was what is true, this was what is supposed to happen. And that's what is evidentiary contrivances. And evidentiary contrivances do not allow us to look at the natural state of abundance in this world. There is always abundance. It's just that we are unable to see it because we are blocked by our own concept, and that concept is a limiting belief, and that concept is also a point of view we have about the world. Things like, if I go about making money, then maybe people will not look at me with great honor and respect. They might think that I'm a corrupt person. Now, that's a point of view that you have about the world, and the world does not have any point of view. The world rather supports your point of view. So, every point of view that you have, the world is going to support that. If you have a point of view that I can only charge people by the hour and not by anything else, then the world will support that point of view. You will find people who will come to you in your life who will probably uh, extend that hour and or come less than an hour, and then you will struggle with demanding money from them. If they extend it, then of course you will struggle. If they remain less than an hour, then also you are going to struggle because you charge money by the hour. So the world does not have a point of view, it is our point of view. Every point of view that we have is supported by the world. So all the point of views that have been passed down to us by our friends, by our parents, by our relatives, by our ancestors, we have to look at them with great interest, of course, because they are interesting point of views. But we also have to question that, are these really my point of views? Is it important? Is it necessary for me to believe in it? What can happen if I don't believe in it? Right? So there is a tool called being in the question. Of course, I will teach you a lot of tools throughout these classes, but one of the tools is being in the question. I will come back to it. But right now, what I want you to do is, when you have written down all those limiting beliefs from the last class that I have given, all the should and should not, must and must not about money that you have heard, that you have subconsciously believed in, that you have absorbed, picked up from your parents and ancestors and relatives, ask yourself, who does this belong to? Every point of view that you come across, ask yourself, who does this belong to? Is this really mine? Well, you don't have to figure out or pinpoint who does it actually belong to. But the very fact that moment you ask the question, who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? The moment you ask that, you know that it is not yours. And the moment you know that it is not yours, you can disassociate, disidentify with that belief system. Sometimes I write down all these different belief systems that are blocking me. I become aware of them. And then I ask myself, who does this belong to? Who does this belong to? I keep asking until I'm totally convinced that it is not mine to begin with. It came to me at a certain point of my life. It probably came to me as a child. It came to me maybe as an adolescent. It came to me maybe in a previous lifetime altogether. Or maybe it is not mine, maybe it is one of my ancestors who went through whatever they went through. For example, I had this belief that if I have more money in my account, then maybe at certain point of time I will not be able to control that money or manage that money because it will be too much for me to control. Now I kept on thinking, who does this belong to, and I asked my parents and all of them, and they did not seem to resonate with it, by the way. And I was really plagued by it, that I was initially learning all this money breaking system and decoding money beliefs and all of that. And I was really plagued by it at that moment, that who does this belong to? Of course, I don't have to figure out who it belongs to, but there was something in me that wanted to know the exact story, that where does this belief come from? And then I figured out that my grandfather's father used to be a great merchant, and he in the villages of Assam was not only well known, but he was one of those rare people who would go up an elephant and ride an elephant. And during those days, my Parnana's days, it was quite a feat to achieve for a man who was considered not only honorable and respectful, but also supposed to have a lot of money. Now, there is a tragedy behind it, that he was taken down from his position, and a lot of people conspired against him and killed him and took away his money and distributed his money. And my grandfather had to spend most of his childhood in poverty. Now, of course, I have inherited the fear of my grandfather, but I have also inherited the fear of my great grandfather, who did possess and have a lot of money, and he could not control that money, and because of that money, he had to lose his own life. Now, I got to know about this story, and I could disassociate. Of course, I had sadness about it. Of course, I felt really bad about it. But at the same point of time, I questioned myself that is it really important for me to believe in it, because that is not my story. That's not my reality, my fate. That's probably a point of view that was passed down from generation to generation. And I could look at it and say that it's an interesting point of view, but maybe it does not belong to me. That's your second tool. That you have to listen to people's point of views, but also respond to them in your own mind or even loudly by saying that interesting point of view. If someone says, it's going to take me 3 months to bootstrap this company, and then I will be able to make X amount of money on my fourth year, and then Y amount of money in my fifth year, and this is how it is going to be. And if you are thinking of opening a company, please don't expect to earn a lot of money in your first 2 to 3 years, because that's now not how it works. Now, that's a reality of the other person who is giving to you. Maybe it's not your reality. So you have to respond to it by saying, well, interesting point of view. And in your head, you are reversing it and you're giving it back to that person, that who does this belong to? Let me give it back. It's not mine. You just respond to it without an yes, without a no, by saying interesting point of view. Well, fine. Whatever, if someone comes and tells you that, it's difficult to make a living in New York with X amount of money, and you have to have 15 lakhs per month in order to settle there. If you are thinking of moving out, please do not go there until and unless you have 5 crore in your bank balance. Build it and then go there. And now you want to go now, you want to settle down now. But probably you're buying that person's belief system by saying a yes, or in your mind accepting it. At that moment when the acceptance is just coming, that moment you have to say interesting point of view, or it does not belong to me. It is not mine to begin with. Does this belong to me? Is this mine? That's how you disassociate and you identify what is yours and what is not yours. Even if it is coming from a friend, even if it is coming from a well-wisher, even if it is coming from a mentor, it may be coming from a parent as well, but it does not necessarily be a part of your worldview. Remember that whatever worldview, point of view you have about yourself and about money, the world is going to support you in that. Even if it is negative, the world is going to support you. And when you say, or when you acknowledge interesting point of view, but it's not my point of view, the world is also going to support you in that it's not your point of view. So you can allow it to rest. A lot of people suffer from this idea of sticking into one single point of view. You may have heard so many people keep on saying that, oh, we don't have enough, we never have enough, all the money goes away, whatever money comes also goes away, and हम तो ये सब नहीं कर सकते, हमारे पास नहीं है. What do you call that? Not enough, nahi hai, will not be able to have enough, I am never enough, money is never enough, even if we make money, it's not going to be enough. What is that? That whole energy, that whole energy is called poverty consciousness. For a lot of us, lack is more real than abundance. I will give you an example. For example, you go to a shop and you want to buy yourself a pair of skirts or maybe a shirt. And what happens is you go and you look at the price tag, and then you think that, oh, this is expensive and I may not be able to afford it. And therefore, at that moment, because you cannot afford it, it becomes valuable to you. Many times, whenever you are going for something, for example, there are a lot of people who tell me that, oh, your classes are so expensive, I cannot afford it. Oh, your sessions are so expensive, I cannot afford it. And what happens in that moment? In that moment, again, you are deciding that you cannot afford it, and therefore you are stuck in the how of the process, that this I cannot afford, Therefore, probably it's valuable, and maybe I will have to come back to it one day when I can afford it, or maybe I will never be able to afford it. It is not a part of my world. And when you do that, you are stuck in that reality. You are stuck in a pool of consciousness called poverty consciousness. Whenever you are allowing something to become more valuable because you cannot afford it, that thing becomes a part of your poverty consciousness. It cannot be there in your world, right? Imagine how, by doing that, we are making lack more real than abundance. By saying constantly that I cannot afford it, it is not for me, these things are not for people like us. We will never be able to have that kind of life. We will never be able to wear those kind of clothes. We will never be able to have those kind of perfumes. We will never be able to eat that kind of food. And by that I say I cannot afford it. The moment you say I cannot afford it, it becomes more valuable to you. It becomes a part of a different world that your world cannot have. And at that moment, uh, that becomes your point of view, and the world supports you, and you are stuck in that poverty consciousness. A lot of people feel that to have lack in life is to probably be morally superior. Things like, a lot of times, I'm sure a lot of people have heard that how some mothers or fathers say that, oh, we don't have money, but we are happy. Look at them, they have so much, but they aren't happy. So there is a sense of moral superiority about the fact that, because we don't have, therefore we are in a much more peaceful state. And some people say that, oh, I can't be comfortable around such people in parties because I'm not like one of them. I'm more intellectual, and therefore I can't be like all of those people who keep on splashing and sploshing money all around. So somewhere you are again forming a polarization between being intellectual and not having money. That intellectual people probably are not supposed to have money, because the moment you make money, you become a mercenary, or you commodify yourself. And these are the blocks. You have to ask yourself, who do they belong to? Whose point of view is it? Is it really your point of view? If it is, then it's an interesting point of view, because it's not my point of view. So that's how you go ahead with it. Okay. I also want to say that, poverty consciousness, that nahi hai, I don't have enough, we don't have enough, that whole idea of poverty is also, some sort of an obsession, some sort of an addiction. A lot of us are addicted to poverty consciousness, because then we can be morally superior. We can say things like, I don't have enough money, but at least I'm happy. I don't have money, but at least I have a good family. I may not have money, but at least my lover loves me. I do not have money, but I have good education in my life. I may not have money, but I have good values in my life. So that's the reason. These are the different evidentiary contrivances you give yourself for being in poverty consciousness. And mind you, poverty consciousness is not only with people who do not have money. Poverty consciousness can even be in people who have money. For example, if you have a lot of money and then a gardener works in your garden, and you give so you do not treat your gardener properly, and you keep on imploding on him all the time, you keep on abusing him all the time, you are aggressive to him, and say, you do not treat him well as a fellow human being. For you, his profession and the amount of money he makes and his stature is less than you are, which means you are recognizing the fact that there is poverty in this world. This man is poor, and hence he is lesser than me. By doing that, you are also becoming aware of poverty consciousness, which means you have that consciousness within yourself. Therefore, you are able to recognize that man as lesser than you, as poorer than you. So please remember that poverty consciousness is not only limited to people who are actually poor, or who say that they don't have enough, or people who have and still say that they don't have enough, or people who cannot afford. But it is equally relevant for people who do have a lot of it but probably are not generous, probably are unable to look at others with respect and their profession. They are also equally aware of the poverty consciousness in other people's lives, and by not respecting them, by not being generous to them, by not paying them heed, attention, love, and honor, what are you doing? You are only becoming aware of a world where poverty exists, right? And you also live in that world, hence poverty exists for you as well, which is an interesting point of view, but that's not my point of view. So this is your second tool, interesting point of view, but that's not my point of view. And ask yourself, who does this belong to? Is it really mine to begin with, or is it someone else's? I will come back to more tools, more questions, and the idea of abundance. But before I go back, uh, remind yourself what I had spoken about lack. That how, by believing in the fact that I cannot afford so and so, you make that item or you make that service way more valuable, and then you discard it from your world, and then you allow yourself to never have a choice to have it in your life. And by that, you are cutting your choices, right? Ask yourself, if money was not an issue, what is the choice that you would have made? You would have probably gone to that shop, seen a pair of skirts or seen a shirt, and maybe you would not have looked into the price tags because all the price tags look all the same. Money was not the issue. You would have bought the shirt or the skirt that looked nice on you and not the one that was probably expensive, right? So, somewhere or the other, you are allowing your inability to afford it to become the factor to make it more valuable than others. Think of it this way: if money was not the issue, if all the tags in that piece of cloth had the same amount of money written on it, would you still would have chosen that particular shirt or skirt? Think about it. This is what I'm going to leave you with, and I'll come back to the next class with the idea of choice and free will, and of course about different point of views and different questions. Till then, think about it.